So I'd like to welcome Georgia Vargas, who is a book writing coach, and she is the lady responsible for starting me writing my book, The Space Between, and it's evolved a lot since we started working together, which will be 2 years ago now. And I came across Georgia on an online conference, women's conference, where she did a short piece about writing, and it was, I can't exactly remember what she said, but something in what she said sparked that interest in me to think, oh, well, maybe I should write a book. So I will hand over to Georgia to explain a little bit more about herself, and then we can get on to talking about people writing and sharing their stories. So thank you, Georgia, for joining me. And yeah, do you want to just explain who you are, your story, and how you've ended up doing what you do?
Well, first of all, I've got to say thank you, Jackie, and I'm so proud to see that you finished the book and it's out there, and that's just a brilliant achievement, and that just is like gold for me. So thank you for sharing that with me and letting me be part of that journey at the very beginning. That's a real privilege, so thank you. And writing, I think, has always been in my life. I think ever since I've had the privilege of learning with the pencil, I've always been scribbling something. So I've done, I'll give you the list. It's all, I've written plays which started out at dialogue because I'm fascinated with, conversations. And I did poems, I did performance poetry, which is fabulous to do. I've written articles, I've hosted, lots of events. I did Toastmasters, I did it here in Spain where I live. I've been a musician, so I've done a lot of musical arrangements and lyrics. I wrote lyrics as well. So I've always incorporated writing into my life. Short stories, anthologies. I've contributed to loads of anthologies. And then the time came, I was around about 2018-19 when I said, no, now I'm going to write my own book instead of just contributing to everybody else's. And that's when I wrote The Rule Breaker's Guide to Step Up and Stand Out, which followed on with the Rule It book shortly afterwards. And then there it was, staring me in the face. I've got to, help others to do this, because it's one of my big things to say, our voice and our pen are our two most powerful tools of communication, our weapons of construction, our ways to make an impression in the world and share our message. And writing is just a wonderful way to communicate between head, heart, soul, hand, the whole thing, Yeah. So
absolutely, and I can relate to that. I never would have considered myself a writer. English was probably my worst subject at school after art, and I just love it now. And there's always development, isn't there? And there's ways to improve how you're writing, but the act of doing it and just getting thoughts and ideas out of your head and solidify them somewhere is really powerful.
yes.
And then, like I say, I'd never thought about writing a book until I heard your speech. And that particular conference, it was like October 2020. We were all in the midst of everything. I think I just had my surgeries, and there were so many inspiring talks. I don't know if you remember, on that particular conference run by Aspire by Dr. Sam Collins, and you did your piece, and you talked about the power of sharing a story, and that really appealed to me. And why do you think that is so important for people to do that?
I think we all have our own personal experiences and versions and points of view of life, and it's so important that we hear other people's stories and opinions. And there's always been censorship, but it's been quite tough in the last couple of years. And so I think it's even more imperative that we allow ourselves to express ourselves and to release, to share, to unburden, unchain. And I think particularly for women, because our stories have been suppressed, our experiences have been expressed for centuries, actually. And that oppression creates lots of frustration and illness, as we all know. And so being able to express yourself through writing gives you a chance to do it in a private way first, in an intimate way first. And there are so many ways to do it, you know, to express yourself, from flash fiction to short stories to poetry to writing a book, as you did, as a way to express your version of life, your point of view, what your personal experience was. And I think it's very powerful. Writing is cathartic.
Oh, I can definitely adhere to that, absolutely. And even if I got to the point where even if the book didn't do anything, it was enough to have written it.
Yeah.
And even if nobody ever reads it, it's enough to have written it. So absolutely, completely agree with that. And I suppose the thing that often occurred to myself and to some of the other people that were the lovely women that were in the writing circle that I did with you, and you know, it comes around, is that you kind of think, well, the story I've got to tell is not that interesting. Who am I to tell a story? What am I going to talk about? And I guess me having cancer was a thing. It's like, oh, well, this is something big. I can talk about that. And you know, sort of thinking that the story that I've got isn't as interesting as somebody because maybe they're well known or what have you. And I mean, I don't particularly share that view now, because since I've been writing and all the things I've written, and there was chapters that I wrote in the early days that haven't even touched, they haven't even gone into the book because they were like, oh, it doesn't really work now as the book evolved. And now I can think of so many other things that I could write about, that I'd like to write about, because I'm just more aware and observant of the stuff that's going on and things that are happening to me, and feeling like I could share that. But, you know, could you sort of speak to that idea that people feel that, well, what have I got to say? Well, why would anybody want to hear my story? Who am I to share a story?
No, well, that's a big one, because I think there's like 53,000 reasons and excuses that we all give to why we can't do it. And some of it starts from teachers and parents telling you, you can't do that, you mustn't do that, you're no good at that, you'll never be, and all that. Limiting beliefs and the modern syndromes that put us off. And then, of course, you know, we're very busy. And we don't prioritize, and we don't recognize the importance of our own experience. We compare, we think, oh no, so is much better than me. And I think certain cultures as well don't encourage us to shine and show. We call it bragging and showing off, and the sort of negative words, instead of saying, you're really good at that. I mean, I'm, you know, proud and bold and say what I'm good at. And I also admit what I'm not good at, because I know that I need to delegate that. But when it comes to the writing, it's all about developing your confidence, your courage, and your creativity. And they grow during the writing process. As you just said, that now you feel able and capable and ready and enthusiastic to write about so many other topics. And you will, Jacqui.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I've done a couple of other online courses, writing courses, all sorts of things on completely different subjects, just because it's like, well, I'm interested in different ways of developing ideas and thinking of how you know, looking at things from different perspectives, that then kind of brings you into the same theme but in a different way. And oh gosh, yeah, no, what's really interesting is once I went from having completed it to sort of the editing and the mechanics of getting the book out, which we'll, you know, go on to talk about shortly, I am actually missing the actual act of just writing, because at the moment I'm not doing much of that. I'm doing stuff that's like I say, mechanics of getting it finished and rereading, editing and stuff, as opposed to coming up with creating something new. And I'm really keen to be able to do more of that when the book comes out in a few days' time. Just something you picked up on there that I just wanted to bring up when you were saying, one of the things I love working about you, and obviously I bought your books after we started working together, is that your whole thing about there are no rules. And we talked a lot in the writing circle about, you know, the old-fashioned rules of publishing and who could do it, and obviously the internet and the self-publishing has opened up things to people, and even people writing blogs and doing things online has opened up this opportunity for people to do things and change the rules. But yeah, you know, that's been a big thing for you, isn't it? Is about, you know, we don't have to be constrained. That's what you talk about in your books. And you know what,
I think it's really important to distinguish what are the rules that you benefit from. And if you don't benefit from them, then why are you following them? It's kind of, you know, silly. And also because publishing has changed dramatically over the last 3 to 5 years. There's only 5 big companies left. They've all merged into each other, and there's one big merger still pending, you know. But what it has done for authors and for us, people like us, it has allowed us to take self-publishing by the reins and recognize that it gives us total control of our account. We retain rights. We can make more money from it. We can make decisions that you would never have, even if you go with independent companies. Some independent companies will charge you a fortune and give you no rights at all, and you might not even have the copyright for the book. So there's lots of ins and outs that have changed, but self-publishing is most definitely the way to go, and it is the future. And there are a lot of people now that have had their books published, especially in the fiction arena, by slightly, you know, well-known, but not the big 5. And they're being picked up by the big 5 now, because they see the success in that self-publishing range. It's no longer considered, you know, that snobbish attitude that people used to have about self-publishing. It's now, this is the way to go, because you now have control over your book, over the decisions. It's wonderful. It's a great feeling to have, and, you know, confidence, courage and creativity all in your hands.
Yeah, and I think if you'd never been through it, you don't really, I mean, I have to hold my hand up and say I don't really understand what I wouldn't have had if I'd done it myself, you know what I mean, because I haven't done it through a publisher, I've self-published. Some of those constraints and things that you're obviously familiar with, because I've not experienced that, I don't fully have an understanding of that, but I, you know, understand from what you've said, and doing it yourself, it shortens the process. It's, like you say, it gives you a lot more freedom, and it just opens up the opportunity for people, doesn't it, who don't want to spend, you know, they want to get something out there, and then it's for the public to decide, isn't it? If people like it, they'll buy it. It's not for someone else to decide what goes out there into the world.
I just say one thing, Jacqui, that what's really important is, and I don't know if all coaches do it, but for me it's really important, perhaps it's my showbiz background, but you have to market your own book. And the big companies don't do that anyway. They say, yeah, but they don't really do it. They rely on you to do it. And you have to start marketing your book from chapter 2, from day 1, you know. And it's the one, and that is the wonderful part about it, because it helps you, it gives you accountability, first of all, because you say, well, I'm writing a book, I've written a book, it's almost done, I talk about this, I talk about that, I'm so excited to share with you my latest topics. And it, you know, people are listening, they start listening from that early process. So you've got to finish that book, and it spurs you on. It gives you an insight, like we're doing now. You're marketing your book, and people will say, wow, yeah, people want to see who the author is.
Yeah.
They want to know who you are. They want to know the backstory. They want to see your face. That is what's really a big change today. You've got to have that marketing mindset from the beginning.
And I think I told people really early on that I was writing it. And I was in the middle of my treatment and going through my chemo, and I just told people, because again, that meant that it wasn't this secret thing that I was doing, a little bit ashamed behind closed doors. And it's like, oh, you know, I'm doing this thing. I just, I'm writing a book. Okay. And then for the last 2 years, everyone's been asking me, it's ready. But it is, you know, and for me, one of the reasons it took me longer than I perhaps would have initially anticipated is that when I finished, and I'd set the deadline of when I wanted to stop writing anything new, which was the anniversary of my diagnosis. And then I had a bit of a pause. Then I sold my business, so I was quite busy. But then when I went back to it, because like you know, there was this bit of, oh, okay, I don't quite know where I am now, because I got sort of spat out the end of the treatment train, and I talk about this a lot in the book. And then I was like, oh, I just kind of don't really know who I am, what I'm doing. And I needed a bit of space, because every time I went back to trying to look at what I'd written, I was really struggling with it. I was still too attached and too in it. And then having that little bit of a gap and sort of moving on with life, and then going back to it with fresh eyes and a different perspective on things and a bit of separation, made it much easier to to put it together and think, right, how can I now share this so it's of some value to other people, rather than just this huge brain dump at 5 o'clock in the morning when I couldn't sleep, and whatever during my chemo when I was just up and not feeling great, or things would, I'd feel things and I needed to get it out. You know, it's turning that into something that other people can read and make sense of. And then, you know, I actually haven't written anything particularly new since, it's been months now, obviously, because then the actual getting it out there process takes a little bit of time and things. So
but you know, Jacqui, it's about finding your own pace, which is what you did.
Yeah.
You know, finding your own, and in that process you find your voice, you find your style, you find what you really, really want to write about, what you really, really, really want to write about. Yeah. And you did that, and that's what counts.
And I think you talk about, you know, we went through again in the writing circle, which was really helpful, the different ways of the process of writing, and writing habits and things. I mean, do you want to share some of that in terms of, because again, there are no rules, are there? But there are guidelines. Yes. Yeah,
guidelines. But I think one of the hardest things is honing in on that theme, the overall theme of your book. What is it that you, like you said, it really, really want to write about? Because it often changes when you start to dig deep to write it out, actually. So in the beginning, it is finding that theme. And then I always say, okay, write 10, 15 topics that you want to actually discuss. There's always some overlap, some repetition there, but just the writing out of those topics gives you an idea of what your chapters might be about, and they change. And when you see them on paper, that's the magic of it all. You see them on paper, you think, I'm not sure. Oh, yeah, that one I like. Oh, etc., etc., etc.
Yeah.
And then I think the next step really is finding out what are the lessons in the stories. Stories and lessons, lessons and stories, because some people have millions of stories but not enough lessons, or they haven't found them yet, or vice versa. And so that really helps you to structure it, to work it out, writing it out in a very simple way, what the lesson that you're teaching, sharing, and your message or mission, whatever your experience is, and then illustrating it with a story, or the story that tells something that others could learn from, and there's the lesson. So it's about using those very simple techniques. And then I'm afraid to say, you do the writing, because I don't. You're going to get that pen or that fingers going and just get on with it, you know?
Yeah, and I think it's like lots of things, isn't it? It's building a habit of doing it, and initially it can be difficult, can't it? And it's this 10 minutes, 15 minutes, building it up till it becomes instinctive, or actually, you know, you're actually wanting to do it. And I'm quite big on routine, and I have to create, you know, a routine to get through my days, and now to make sure that I still keep doing the things I want to do, because as my life starts to return to something where I'm doing other things, all the time and effort I spent looking after myself and the time I spent writing, and I don't want to lose all that, because it's become such a big part of my life. I want to keep it going, and that's it, and that's important to me. And so I just, you know, I'm prioritizing that.
Yes.
Alongside with, you know, other things that I do to look after myself, as well as still being a wife and a mother and running a business, albeit a different one than the one I was running before. So if somebody wanted to get started now, so if we've inspired somebody, which I hope we have, anybody watching this to think, oh, actually, do you know what? I could do this. And if people know me and, you know, they're like, oh, Jacqui can do it, I can do it.
Yeah.
What would be the sort of first step, the really, really small, easy step that somebody could make to actually?
Well, to write down 3 to 5 themes, ideas of what they would like the book to be about. What is that message? Is it a mission? Is it something, is it a legacy that you want to leave? Is it a business book? Is it something that you have you've done in your life that you think that here's my version that will really help? Is it also something that you've been through, like yourself, where you know that it would help other people feel less lonely? They could identify with it. So write 3 to 5 really good subjects. Could be 2 or 3 sentences for each one, and you know, expand on it little by little. And then when you've got those 3 to 5, stare at them, break them down, go back to it, put it on the back burner, put it in the freezer, and come back to it a week later and look, oh yeah, I like that. Oh, what's that? I didn't write that, did I? Oh yeah, that one excites me. And you slowly break it down until you find the overall theme. And then you've got a pathway. Then you've got the pathway.
And perhaps to not think about any beliefs that you have about how to write, what's good writing, what's bad writing. It's then just about writing, isn't it? It's just about writing whatever it is that you have to say in your voice. And
your mentor, your coach, your editor will kill all the things that don't work. I mean, I now my level of writing is good, but everybody needs professional editing. Everybody needs it. It's no good saying, oh, my VA will do it or my best mate will do it, because they don't know what to look for. And when we write, we sometimes have a colloquial style, and where do you put the punctuation and all this kind of thing. And so there's so many things that the professional eye picks up that you don't see, because you're so close to it, first of all, and you like it that way.
Yes. Well, one of my discoveries is that I use the word that a lot. And I actually think it's partly because I speak French, and in French, where they would put the word que in a sentence for that, where English people, we wouldn't use the word that. Yeah. I think because I have French lessons and I speak a lot of French, that I'm so used to thinking of it like that I put it in all the time. And now as I'm writing, I'm so aware, and I'm like, oh, I don't need it. It still makes sense in English. It's so funny when she said it. I'm like, oh, I know why I do that. But yeah. But I wouldn't have picked up on it, because when I read it, it's like, well, that makes sense.
It's normal. Yeah.
The fact that it's in like almost every sentence was just like, I just didn't see it at all. Yeah. I do now, because obviously it's been highlighted to me, and amongst other things. But yeah, no, I mean, that's been an interesting process as well. And it's a little bit of a, when it comes back with all the
red lines
changing, and you're like, oh gosh, that looks like a lot. But it's
it makes sense.
You have to get over that little bit and not be too precious about it, don't you? And see it as a process of developing and evolving, and not take it too
and being more concise and more clear about what you want to say. I think the other thing is people use adverbs all the time, and it's like, nowadays if I see adverb, get rid of that one, get rid of that, get rid of it, bury it deep. You don't need it in writing.
I think that sat with me, actually. I remember you saying that while I was writing. I didn't think that. I couldn't. Yeah, I do remember you saying that. So if anybody wants to, where's the best place for people to find you? Oh, you're on LinkedIn a lot, I know. Is that the main place?
Yeah, LinkedIn is my main spot. I have a website, which is myname.com. And I've got all my programs, and I do a masterclass, free masterclass monthly. The next one coming up later this month. And so you can find out all the programs and activities that I'm involved in. And as you said, LinkedIn is a great platform for authors. And there's lots of publishers there, and coaches as well, mentors, editors. So great place to be if you're stirring in your mind. And look, if your New Year's resolution is to write your book, it's coming up now. Get ready.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And wonders. And again, I mentioned this in the book, the wonders of technology that has allowed us to even meet in the first place. You're in Spain. I'm in the UK. Our book group, the writing circle that I was in with you, we had a Canadian lady, didn't we? And a lady in, was she Kenya? She was Kenyan.
Yes.
And really, and
global.
Yeah, and it's such an incredible thing to have this as a resource. And I know people get sick of being on Zoom calls and being on, but for me, to be able to do that in the depth of having my treatment, and to be able to meet people, and I'm still in touch with one of the ladies, and it's just so wonderful, and to have shared that experience of working with you in that group, and being able to do that from opposite sides of the globe is fabulous. So keep doing what you're doing, Georgie. You're a real inspiration, and an ray of Spanish sunshine.
Well, I just say that collaborations and working in team and gives brainstorming accountability and makes us feel good. We support each other and we inspire each other. And I'm really so proud of you, Jacqui, that you finished your book, and with all the turmoil that was going on in the world, in your life, just like, bravo, baby.
Thank you so much, and thank you for taking the time today to talk with me.
Yeah. All the best now, Jacqui. Take
Thank
care.
you. Bye bye.